Hello, welcome along to Transfer Talk. Manchester United manager Erik ten Hag reveals exclusively the club are looking to bring in new players, but he wouldn't be drawn on whether a new centre-back would be coming in or not. We're going to hear from him in just a moment. It is decision time for Conor Gallagher. An offer is on the table to go to Atletico Madrid, but does he want to stay in England at Chelsea? We're going to discuss his options. Mikel Merino could return to the Premier League, with Arsenal interested in the Euro 2024 winner. And Fulham are getting busy. They could sign 2 centre-backs and 2 midfielders. All the details of those deals to come. But first, let's get to Manchester United. Speaking exclusively to our senior reporter, Melissa Reddy, Erik ten Hag has discussed the recent injury to their new signing, Leny Yoro, and also whether that will force them back into the market.
So you have to be there aligned, and we want to be proactive, and we want to attract players who can execute our game model. And so, from profiling, we used to get the right players, and that's a daily process, and it's a continued process as well. It's in the window, but also during windows. But that has to grow.
Are you still keen on a left-sided defender?
We have left-sided defenders with Luke Shaw and with Licia Martinez.
Do you have enough?
We're always looking for having squad depth, cover all the positions, as possible a double, because we know we go in the season, it's a survival of the fittest. But it needs to be the right player, and also finance, FFP, all such things we have to take into mind, because otherwise we can't bring a good squad on the pitch.
One of the things that could affect recruitment is injuries. Leny Yoro out for at least 3 months. Would that alter your thinking in any way?
No, we have a clear plan. We know what to do. Injuries are part of the process. You can't avoid it, because top football, you go to the edge, and it will happen. And then you need a squad who can cover this.
Right, James, what are United's current centre-back options then?
Well, Bella, we know that Rafael Varane departed in the summer following the end of his contract. Leny Yoro, he's been signed as the long-term replacement. We know he's now out for 3 months, and Willy Camboire also left in the summer. So United have got limited options heading into their opening match against Fulham in 2 weeks' time. Yoro, he'll have to wait until autumn to make his Premier League debut, and that leaves 4 fit centre-back options for Erik ten Hag as things stand. Now, Lisandro Martinez, he's the first choice at left centre-back, but he missed a large portion of last season. However, he appears to have recovered and played a huge role in Argentina winning the Copa America. United will pray they can keep him fit this season. Now, Harry Maguire, he looks most likely to partner him this season, despite looking like he may leave last summer. Went on to play 22 times in the Premier League and won the Player of the Month award in November. Now, the future of Victor Lindelof could be absolutely key in this window. He's entered the final year of his contract, no conversations about an extension. And then finally, there's Jonny Evans. Many didn't think that he'd feature at all last season when he came and trained with the club. He ended up playing more Premier League games than any other centre-back last season. Erik ten Hag will hope he doesn't have to call upon Evans as much as he did last season. Now, it's uncertain if United will sign another centre-back unless there's a departure in this area. But guys, do you think, when you consider Varane's left, Yoro's now injured for the start of the season, do they need to bring somebody in regardless, even if Lindelof or Maguire don't depart?
I think they do, and you can kind of tell by the fact that they've been linked with Branthwaite, they've been linked with De Ligt as well. Yoro's only 18 years old, so it might take him a while to get used to the Premier League, but now with the injury, that even sets him back even further. But when you look at the ages of those defenders that you mentioned, Maguire, 31, he had a few injuries last season. Lindelof, he's been at the club for years. Jonny Evans, I'm sure they wouldn't have wanted him to play that many games last season, but he was great when he did play. But also, it's just good to freshen things up. Ten Hag spoke about the style of football that he wants to play and how important that is. So I'm sure that they're going to be very keen on bringing another centre-back in.
Surely they'd have to move one on if they were to bring someone in there. I know Yoro's obviously injured, but they've got 5 relatively high profile centre backs there. I think Evans is probably happy being the fifth, being the backup that comes in when needed, albeit he had to play a lot last season. But you'd think, with the wages some of those players would be on, to be able to get a big centre back in like a Branthwaite, like a De Ligt, you'd think they'd have to move someone on.
Well, that's our understanding, that United, their stance isn't expected to change because of this injury to Lenny Yoro. Some felt that because of the issues United had at centre-back last season, they need as many as they can get. The hope is that Lisandro Martinez stays fit. It doesn't look like Harry Maguire's probably going to start the opening match of the season unless United are able to sign somebody. So Victor Lindelof, I think his future is absolutely key because he's entered the final year of his contract. There's no discussions about him signing an extended deal. So United see this window as the final window where they can get some sort of fee for him, even though they're not actively trying to replace him in this window. But it does feel like if Lindelof goes, then they can hit the button go on the likes of Matthias de Ligt or potentially Jared Branthwaite.
We see this a lot, don't we? The transfers domino effect, and you alluded to it as well. And it's also the case with Scott McTominay.
Yeah, look, we know that Fulham have heavy interest in Scott McTominay. Would he be willing to leave Manchester United to go to Fulham? I'm not so sure. He, again, was kind of touted around to West Ham last summer. There was interest there. There was talk that he would leave, and he ended up staying. And had a really good season, played an awful lot of football, scored goals. I think a player like McTominay will know that, I might not start the season as first choice, but I back myself as the season goes on to become an important player, and that was exactly what he did last season. Was involved in Manchester United winning a trophy as well. Clearly loves the club. Fulham offering around 20 million at the moment. I don't think that's enough. I think Manchester United would probably want closer to 30, but I don't really see why he'd want to leave Manchester United at the moment, given what happened 12 months ago and how the season went for him. I'm not sure he'd want to go.
I think it was really interesting hearing Erik ten Hag speak about Scott McTominay in his press conference overnight. He said he's so pleased to have him playing in this more advanced role. He's so important to making goals for my team, which isn't the sort of comment you'd expect him to make of a player that he expects to depart this summer. He's been so important for Manchester United, playing a number of different roles over the past few seasons. There was the role he had to play alongside Fred. They were much maligned as a partnership, but probably when you look at that centre midfield partnership, it's probably the best United have done for a while because of the issues they had last season. He scored 10 goals in the league as well last season. He was so important to get United to a credible position in the league. And he's a player that I think they like to have because he's so good in the dressing room. He's such a team player. He offers that on-field leadership as well. So I do think United would be reluctant to let him go. But if they are to try and enhance this midfield, and it does mean that someone has to go for somebody to come in, then I think it's probably a sacrifice that United are willing to make.
We're talking about Lenny Yoro and his injuries, but they have been so unlucky with injuries, haven't they, United?
They have, especially when you look at the centre-back combinations they had to field. 14 in total last season in the Premier League, and that really came to a head in that game against Crystal Palace at the start of May when they lost 4-0, and it was felt like there was no way back for Erik ten Hag and for a number of those players. But Erik ten Hag showed that tactical flexibility in the final games of the season and won the FA Cup, which played a huge role in him getting this third season at Manchester United. They had to play 6 or 7 different players at left-back. Diego Dallo had to play there on his wrong foot. So the hope is, with United suffering so many injuries last season, I know every fan felt it last season, but it's worth bearing in mind, 45 separate cases recorded, more injuries than any other club, a total of 1,620 days, players on the sidelines, 21 different players injured last season. They'll be hoping, as many clubs will, they won't be affected as badly this season.
Yeah, absolutely. OK, we're going to move on to Chelsea now and discuss Conor Gallagher. So he remains open to agreeing a new long-term contract with Chelsea, but he's considering all his options following a £34 million club-to-club agreement between Atletico Madrid and the Blues for his transfer. Sam, Chelsea are waiting now, basically, for Gallagher and his camp to decide what to do. Where do you think he's going to end up?
I think it depends on the role he'll play for the team. He's been linked with Atletico Madrid, linked with Spurs, but, he played such a key role for Chelsea last season. He was probably their second best player behind Cole Palmer, who got those plaudits because of the goals and the assists he got. But in terms of, the other stats, the duels won, he was first, tackles won, interceptions, possession won. He was so key for them. He held the captain armband for the majority of the season, scored a few big goals. And I think that at his age and the stage he is in his career, he would want that first team football and a team that, is challenging for those European spots and those trophies. So I think it's going to be difficult for him because obviously he loves Chelsea and he would probably want to stay. But at the same time, he has to look at those options and know, these are top clubs coming in for him and he's got a big decision to make.
Yeah, can you guys see why he might want to leave?
I can see why, because I think you considered some of the contract length offers that Chelsea have given to other players in the same area of the pitch. Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall's got a 5-year contract. Enzo Fernandez and Moises Caicedo both given 8-year contracts. And Conor Gallagher, at the age of 24, probably wants a bit more long-term security. We understand that the salary offered to him is comparable to the other midfielders in the same area of the pitch. But a 2-year contract offer with the option of another year, I think he'd be looking at something like a 5-year contract when you consider what Chelsea have done. So the feeling is that Conor Gallagher is probably getting, and the feeling that I suppose we should be getting from the fact that the contract offer is for only 2 years plus 1, is that Chelsea's ownership, and they don't necessarily see Conor Gallagher as part of the long-term future. Otherwise, you'd think they'd try and sew up his contract and his future for the next 5 years or so. But it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out, because we know Chelsea have sold a number of academy graduates over the course of the last few seasons, which is absolutely invaluable when it comes to fitting within profit and sustainability rules. So they'll want to get something for him in this window if he's unable to agree a new contract extension with the club. However, if he's not willing to go to Atletico Madrid, he's also not at this moment in time willing to sign a new contract. We could get towards the final days of this transfer window where Chelsea are willing to take less money simply to ensure he doesn't leave for free next summer or sign a pre-contract agreement with a club like Atletico Madrid in January.
OK, now, they are also interested in Napoli striker Victor Osimhen. The Italian club are keen on Romelu Lukaku. So Napoli have valued Osimhen at about £100 million. There's always transfer speculation about him, nearly every season. Do Chelsea need him, Dan?
I think they've needed a goal scorer, a genuine bona fide goal scorer over the last few years. My worry, if I was a Chelsea fan, would be that, 18 months ago, 12 months ago, you would probably be really excited about this. Even for the 100 million, you think, look, he's a pure goal scorer. He's going to come in and make us better. The last year, his progress hasn't been as good as it was. He's had a difficult time with injuries, had a difficult time with his relationship at Napoli. I said when I was in on Wednesday, it would concern me a little bit that Chelsea almost seemed to have like a free run at him. Whereas again, 12 months ago, I think there'd be lots of other teams that would hold an interest in this player. 100 million feels steep, and we know how many times Chelsea have been burnt with big fees before, particularly in the striker environment as well. We look back to Lukaku, a player that at the moment is still on their books, so they've been desperate to shift window after window, and they haven't managed to do it. So they're big concerns for me if I was a Chelsea fan. Also concerns around Jackson's development. I think it stunts him, and I think he was getting better as the season went on. I understand you need competition, but there's two strikers there that will both want to play as a number 9, and only one of them would be able to. A loan would make more sense for Chelsea, but that loan's only going to come with an obligation to buy. So, Sam's a Chelsea fan. I think it's incredibly risky.
I think when you look at Chelsea's form last season, and Jackson's first season in the Premier League, we saw him play down the middle. He had frustration with some of the chances he was missing, but he was still confident and believed in himself, and he got that belief from his manager and his team. But he's also a player that can play out wide, and he seems selfless in the sense of he can get goals from out there, and Osimhen would only better him as a senior striker. We've seen Osimhen, there's not been that many strikers in world football that has hit the ground running like he has for Napoli, especially in the season when they won Serie A. Yes, injuries has affected, his form last season, but he's still got that ability. And I think he's had the desire to come to the Premier League. He spoke about it in interviews. There's Chelsea fans that have put compilations all over Twitter to show how good he is. And he's just confident in himself. And he's got that raw, rugged edge to, really get goals that could be really suitable in the Premier League. So I think it would be a really good move.
Do you think he's worth £100 million?
I think 100 mil is a lot of money. That is a lot of money. We've not seen that many signings that have gone for that much in that position do that well because of the pressure. And, it's almost as if you cost that much, you have to get 20 plus goals. And if he doesn't, then you've almost fallen short. But at the same time, if there's other players that are contributing, I think he'll be fine.
If you're 100 million, you almost have to be a sure thing. And we all thought when Lukaku came to Chelsea for that fee, I know myself and many other people in the football world were like, right, this is going to propel Chelsea. Chelsea just won the Champions League. They're going to be genuine title contenders here. And that felt like a sure thing for 100 million, and it didn't work out. I would say this feels less of a sure thing than that, but I suppose there's no exact science to it, is there?
You just love winding up Sam.
I've been nice.
OK, coming up on the show, Marco Silva is trying to get as many signings over the line as possible. Could an Aston Villa defender be heading to the capital? Hi there, welcome back. Now, since this morning, transfer news from Fulham has come in that they've held initial talks with Aston Villa over centre-back Diego Carlos. They are one of a number of clubs interested, though. Meanwhile, Villarreal's Jorge Cuenca is expected to have a Fulham medical at their pre-season training camp in Portugal. Dan, you have been busy in the break, busy on TikTok, busy looking at both of these potential targets in detail.
Yeah, took a break from my TikTok era to have a look into this situation with Fulham. Fulham clearly need a centre-back. It's Tosin has gone to Chelsea on a Bosman, and it looks like Tim Ream may go back to the USA as well. So Fulham probably in the market for two centre-backs maybe. Cuenca and Diego Carlos seem to be the two that are linked with them the most at the moment. I don't like to put my Villa hat on very often, but obviously I can talk around Diego Carlos because I watch him play every week for Villa. Probably not first choice when everyone's fit. Someone who was an expensive signing under Steven Gerrard, someone who was highly, highly rated, then suffered a really, really bad injury in his second game for the club, which led him to miss the entirety of that season. Came back strong last season and featured in a number of games, but still does break down with quite a lot of injuries. Every time he seems to get going, he seems to get injured again, which is something Fulham are probably a little bit wary of. There's no doubt his stock's definitely dropped from a few years ago, but he was part of a Villa defence that qualified for the Champions League in finishing fourth, so he has to take some credit away from that. From a Villa point of view, Villa need to shift high earners. Diego Carlos is one of those high earners at the football club at the moment. He would need to be replaced. If he went, I'm sure Villa are talking to Fulham and hoping that some kind of transfer fee can be agreed because his wages are high. He's not first choice. Villa need to be a little bit flexible because they've already spent a fair amount of money. Cuenca, a different type of centre-half in that he is a purely left-sided centre-half, left-footed, 6'2", played a part in a Villarreal team that finished 8th last season in La Liga. Concentration, not his strong suit if you look at who scored for his characteristics. So, two different types of centre-half. Carlos can play right or left, which may be a benefit to Fulham if they're looking to cover two areas of their defensive area. But, yeah, Fulham, they need a centre-back. Could need two. Calvin Bassey still there at the moment. He's the left-sided centre-back. They've got Diop, the former West Ham centre-back, as well. Where do you think Fulham stand with this one?
Well, I think they definitely need to sign one or two. I think they want to sign two in this transfer window because we know Tim Ream isn't part of that pre-season camp in Portugal. Issa Diop didn't start many games last season because of injury, just 16 in the Premier League. So they do need somebody there. Calvin Bassey probably is the one remaining part of the jigsaw in terms of where they were from last season.
Big signing he was as well, wasn't he?
He was, and he was impressive at times. I know he got sent off in that game against Arsenal. They're very unhappy about that. But for Fulham, this will be a season where I think a lot of fans in the summer would have been concerned when they saw the players walk out the door. They couldn't convince Tosin to sign a new deal. Paulinho departing, which I think many Fulham fans thought would happen at some point. I mean, some fans regard him as one of the best players they've seen in the flesh play for Fulham. And with Deco going as well. But when you think about the calibre of players they're looking at in this transfer window, I think Fulham fans may go into this season with optimism if they can get some of these deals across the line.
Now, dialogue remains open with Manchester United over the signing of midfielder Scott McTominay. As expected, Fulham have gone back in with an improved offer. That was worth £20 million, not enough for United to say yes. We spoke about this briefly. He's a very big character, isn't he, like on and off the field?
Yeah, definitely. He would be a great signing for Fulham, but obviously he wouldn't be a direct replacement for Paulinho in terms of ball recoveries, bringing the ball forward and passing it into the forwards. But at the same time, like we've been saying earlier, the quality that he has and that he's shown at Manchester United, the pressure that he's had on his shoulders, he came through the academy, Jose Mourinho gave him his opportunity and he hasn't really looked back since then. He's had a lot of critics, but he hasn't really let that affect him. He loves playing football and he's one of those players that he's willing to learn. And I think in a team where, they're bringing in new signings, there'll be familiar faces that he knows as well. I think that would be a great move for him.
What was fascinating is the first game of the new Premier League season is in a fortnight's time and it's Manchester United hosting Fulham. So you're in a situation where a boyhood Manchester United fan, somebody who's gone through the academy, could potentially be playing in the away dressing room and playing for Fulham. There's still a long way to go in this deal. I think you're right. I don't think it would be a direct replacement for João Paulinho because one thing we've learned, and I think Eric Ten Hag has learned in the last 2 seasons of using Scott McTominay, is that he is better in an advanced role. He does offer that goal threat. He's not at his best when he's collecting the ball off the centre-back, taking the ball, one touch, spraying it. That's not his strength. There's so many other things he's really good at. And also, of course, he plays at centre-back for Scotland at times as well. I think for Scott McTominay, I don't really see him being a huge part of United's long-term future. So as much of a wrench it would potentially be for him to leave, I think it probably would be best for his career and aspirations he has for himself if he does move on, because I can't see him displacing Bruno Fernandes. Mason Mount will probably get a better run this season in that number 10 role, you'd think. I think he'll get a role as an impact sub at Manchester United, but I can't see him starting many games this season unless there's another injury crisis.
It's PSR again as well, isn't it? Like for Manchester United moving forward for the new financial period that will be underway for PSR. It's that pure profit thing where it becomes advantageous to sell someone who's come through your academy and played a number of games for your club. I'm still just come back to would he fancy Fulham? I'm just not sure. If he did go to Fulham though, I think they probably replaced Paulinho from within with Sasha Lukic. He's got better as time's gone on. At Fulham, a similar type of player too. Paulinho, I wonder if that would free McTominay up to do the things he's good at and that they'd become a midfield duo maybe.
And maybe he'll look at what Marco Silva has been able to do with players who have left big clubs, the likes of Willian, even Alex Iwobi at Everton. But you think about Andreas Pereira, someone who left Manchester United 2 seasons ago, and the job Marco Silva has done in terms of rejuvenating his career and how brilliant he is in an attacking force now. I think if McTominay was to depart the club, then going to a stable team like Fulham with a manager Marco Silva could be the thing he needs just to take himself to the next level. Because, as I said, I don't really see him getting huge opportunities at United this season, albeit they will be playing in the Europa League and they've got the hopes of challenging for the Champions League and the Premier League in the not-too-distant future as well.
But I'll be interested to see where they would want to fit him into that Fulham squad, because like you said, Pereira is, he turned his life around there. He spoke about how, that move for him was so great. They've been linked with Smith Rowe. We believe that's getting over the line soon.
Yeah, how are they all going to fit in those two?
Exactly.
Smith Rowe would play wide, wouldn't he? Would he play wide left with?
But he's a number 10 traditionally. Obviously, he's a versatile forward, but it will be interesting to see how he is used in that team. And maybe it's a thing where Marco Silva almost gives him the freedom. But when the team was so used to Paulinho sitting back and just being a straight destroyer, I don't know where I'd put McTominay there, but I'm sure they'll find a space. They
really struggled when Paulinho wasn't there, didn't they? Fulham, their metrics in terms of conceding goals shot up. They lost games. They had a good first season back in the Premier League, but there was a period where Paulinho and Mitrovic weren't there, and they really, really struggled. He's a huge, huge player. Probably, in terms of the Premier League over the last couple of years, he's probably one of the difference between Fulham being comfortable mid-table and being in the relegation battle, so that would be a concern.
Just one more line on Fulham, guys. The paperwork is being sorted before Emile Smith-Rowe officially confirms his move from Arsenal to Fulham. No issues with the deal, and a formal announcement is expected soon. The deal's worth a club record for Fulham, £34 million, inclusive of performance-related add-ons. OK, we're going to stay with Arsenal now, and they remain interested in Real Sociedad midfielder Mikel Merino. Dan, what would they be getting in this player?
Yeah, this is a smart signing for Arsenal if they can get this one over the line. A player that can operate as a number 6 and a number 8. Someone who, I think, looking at it realistically, almost becomes the replacement for Granit Xhaka a year later. Xhaka moved on and Havertz was lined up as the replacement, but Arteta realised that wasn't working and changed Havertz's position to play in the front line. That left a gap in their central midfield rotation. Arsenal were at their best last season when Thomas Partey came back in and him and Jorginho could kind of rotate and facilitate Declan Rice, who could move forward at times. I still think long-term Declan Rice will be a number 6 for Arsenal. Some games he was absolutely brilliant in that role, although he did have some good games playing as an 8 as well. Merino, he's just got so much experience now, international experience with Spain. He's been at Sociedad, a high-level club, for a long time. He's physical, he's powerful, but he's also good in those tight spaces. He's very, very press-resistant. I think he comes in there and improves Arsenal, and we know Arsenal are looking at a midfielder.
100%. And when you look at, you spoke about Xhaka leaving and almost Declan Rice coming in the season after, it would have been so interesting to see how they would have worked together, because it just seems like they would have complemented each other so well. But Merino coming in, almost similar to him, gets involved in goals and assists, a leader as well, had 45 appearances last season, wins a load of duels, so he kind of doesn't put too much pressure on Declan Rice being the only person that does that in that midfield, so shores them up defensively as well. And I think he'll just be a great addition, because we see with Manchester City, they're constantly trying to find who's on the market that can complement the other players. They did it with Kovacic last season. So Arsenal, if they want to keep up with them, definitely have to make moves like this.
I'm shocked City aren't in for Moreno. I really am. I think he'd be the perfect facilitator for Rodri, but also that person to step in when Rodri's not there, which is what they're looking for. I'm really surprised they're not in for him.
What do Arsenal need to really push for the title?
Well, they need to be perfect when you consider what happened last season. Even in 2024, they only lost one Premier League game. That was against Aston Villa at home, and that was enough, which meant they couldn't win the Premier League title. I think they really have developed a squad. Edu and Mikel Arteta deserve an immense amount of credit for the way they built that squad gradually over the course of the last few seasons. But also they've had a transfer strategy, but they've been able to veer away from that as well. Mourinho at the age of 28 would be slightly different, but they signed Kyle Havertz. They saw something in him which maybe other clubs didn't see. Someone who wasn't in that age profile they're looking at, which is early 20s, but players with a lot of experience like Calafiori, like when they signed Ben White as well from Brighton. I'm really interested to see what they do this season moving forward. I don't think at this moment in time there's going to be that, well, Mikel says there's not going to be £100 million signings. They're not going to sign Victor Osimhen as far as we're concerned. I'm not sure whether or not they'll sign a striker. So we'll wait to see what they do in that area, because Gabriel Jesus has been relatively impressive when he's featured. But Kai Havertz, the back end of last season, in the last 14 games of the Premier League season, 9 goals, 6 assists. So I'm intrigued to see whether that experiment continues moving forward, because in the game against Liverpool in pre-season, he played back in that midfield role. It's whether or not they think that Kai Havertz is the man to score the 15, 20 Premier League goals this season that gets them over the line, or they'll continue to persevere with looking for Saka, Ødegaard to score 10 to 15 goals, everybody chipping in, see if that'll be enough to get them over the line. Mourinho, of course, fresh from winning Euro 2024. Would that experience of winning trophies help them get over the line? Because I think they're just 1 or 2% away from doing something.
That winning mentality. OK, guys, we are going to be talking Newcastle next. Can they keep hold of their key players? We'll bring you the latest from St James's Park in just a minute. get to Newcastle, shall we? They and Sheffield United have now agreed a fee for William Osula. It's £15 million plus £5 million. However, the player is yet to agree personal terms. So only once that happens can they book the medical in. James, what do you make of the business that Newcastle have done so far?
Well, because of their PSR issues, the transfer window for Newcastle has almost been in two parts, 30th of June and then beyond. So one thing they did really well was they were to sell really well. I think they were a bit disappointed, well, I think that's putting it mildly, to lose Elliot Anderson, letting him go to Nottingham Forest, an academy graduate, but it's something they felt they simply had to do, and then letting go of Yankuba Minte, despite the fact he hasn't played for Newcastle. He was so impressive under Arne Slot last season. I think Newcastle fans would have loved to see him in a Newcastle shirt, but unfortunately we now be seeing him at Brighton. I think there's a lot of excitement about how he'll get on this season. In terms of who they brought in, Lloyd Kelly is the one that stands out in terms of the defensive options coming in as a free agent. A lot of clubs were interested in signing him, especially with Jamal Lascelles and Sven Botman missing for the start of the season. But I think in terms of they comply with PSR, they've ensured there's not going to be a points deduction this season, and they've done that whilst ensuring for now they've kept hold of the likes of Anthony Gordon, Bruno Guimaraes and Alexander Isak. So it's great they've kept those players together. I think the squad, when you look at it, it's a really good squad in all areas of the pitch. It's a case of keeping everybody fit, because last season they did so well in the end to bounce back and finish 7th where they did, considering all the injuries they were faced with. I think if you keep all those players fit, if Joe Willock, Joe Linton, Nick Pope is now back, then you'd think they were to push on and get back to where they were a couple of seasons ago when they conceded 33 goals in the league. That provided the platform for them to go on and qualify for the Champions League.
It's going to be important, though, for them to keep hold of their key players, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. Especially when you look at the impact that those players had last season. You talked about Gordon and his impact. You know, he got 12 goals, 10 assists in all competitions. He was so important, played up front when Callum Wilson and Isak was injured. But even Isak still had a few games out injured, still scored 25 goals. And then Bruno Guimaraes, you know, he missed one game due to suspension last season, and he also popped up with 7 goals and 10 assists. When you look at their defence, you know, Botman, the season before last, he didn't miss any game due to injury. Last year, he missed 32 games, and that obviously impacted the amount of goals that they were shipping. But I'm looking at the players that I just mentioned. If they weren't available in that period, they might not have been in that European conversation. So this year they're going to want to kick on. You know, they tasted Champions League football. You know, it was so electric at St James's Park. So yeah, it will be definitely key to keep them.
It's been a good week for Hammers fans, hasn't it? Crescencio Somerville's having the second part of his medical. That's ahead of a transfer from Leeds. And talks for Borussia Dortmund's Niklas Füllkrug are at an advanced stage as well. And we mentioned as well that they're closing in on Aaron Wan-Bissaka's signing. Just going to Somerville for a start, James, how will he fit into the squad?
Well, was the Championship Player of the Season last year. He was absolutely brilliant for Leeds. Couldn't quite help them get over the line and get back into the Premier League at the first time of asking. But he's somebody who's young. He's somebody that West Ham have clearly tracked for a long period of time. 21 goals he scored in all competitions last season. It means they've got some brilliant options on the flank. When you consider Jarrod Bowen scored 20 in all competitions, largely playing on the wing. Mohamed Kudus was so brilliant in his first season at West Ham as well. It means they have those options there. It's not just seeing things as just a starting 11, because Somerville may not start at the beginning of the season because of the brilliant options that West Ham have on those flanks and moving forward. But I think it just shows what West Ham are doing. This is the second full summer that Tim Stuyton's had as technical director. He really is now controlling recruitment, because when David Moyes was there was more of a collaboration with Moyes. Moyes did have, when he came back to the club, it was under the proviso that he'd have a say on transfer dealings. Whereas they've moved to this European model now, whereas Julian Lopetegui is the head coach. Yes, he'll have his say on transfers and recommendations. That's why we saw Max Kilman come into the football club after Lopetegui worked with him at Wolves. But it's clear that Stuyton's having his influence, and I think it's really exciting, some of the deals he's been able to get done in this window. And he was a key part of bringing Kudus to the club last summer. So I think West Ham fans are absolutely delighted with what their technical director is doing. They head into this season now, if they can get these 3 deals over the line, they're looking in a really good place for Lopetegui's first season, because the football's going to be slightly different this season. I think one of the main reasons that David Moyes departed was the perceived negative tactics. I don't think Lopetegui's football will be gung-ho, but it'll be aggressive. There'll be controlled possession. So you need players that can build a platform for the likes of Somerville, Bowen and Kudus to actually cause havoc moving forward.
In terms of Somerville, he's had limited Premier League experience, Dan. Is that going to be a problem?
He was part of a lead side that had a bad season, were trying to integrate a new kind of Red Bull model into the football club, and they ended up getting relegated, and a lot of players left. Somerville, crucially, I think, does have some Premier League experience, so the league's not new to him, but what that season in the Championship's enabled him to do, it's enabled him to work on his end product, and he had a lot of end products last season in terms of goals and assists, Championship Player of the Year, as James mentioned. So sometimes having to take kind of a backward step to move forward long term in your career isn't a bad thing, and I think that's the case with Somerville. He's gone away, had a really productive season. Leeds obviously nearly went up to the Premier League themselves, but I think even if they had have gone up, Somerville's probably one of those players now that's ready to make a step up, and a club like West Ham, I think, is the logical next kind of move for him. I think it's a good move. I don't think the fees too outlandish, and I think he'll go there and do well, because he'll take so much confidence from that last season as well. And we've seen West Ham have success with, Bowen coming from the EFL and turning into a club legend. I think it's safe to say now Somerville's still got room to grow at the age he's at as well. I think that's a really exciting signing. I think West Ham fans will be quite buoyant going into this new season.
The other one is Fulkrug. Now, West Ham, they tried to sign him last summer, but that's when he moved to Dortmund from Werder Bremen. He scored 15 goals in 43 appearances, 3 of them in the Champions League, twice for Germany in the Euros as well. It's easy to see why the Hammers are keen, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a really brilliant story when you consider the journey that Nicholas Fulkrug has been on. Up until the age of 29, he was still playing in the second tier of German football. Fast forward to last season, he nearly scores in the Champions League final against Real Madrid, scored twice in the Euros for Germany. And I think for West Ham and for Fulkrug, it's a great move, because Sky Germany are telling us that Fulkrug has spoken to a number of different coaches, including Julian Nagelsmann, the German national manager, about his next steps. And Nagelsmann seems to have encouraged him about the move to West Ham, feeling like this would be a right opportunity for him to put himself right in the frame to be the starting striker for Germany at the next Euros, at the next World Cup even in 2026. West Ham, we know striker is a priority area for them. It's been the priority area for so long. They've not seemed to get it right, regardless of who they've signed, whether it be Ings, Skamaka, go back a few years to Haller. They'll be hoping that this is the right man. But what I like about this potential signing is it's really showing flexibility when it comes to not just necessarily looking for young, talented players from South America or from Europe, as they have done in this window, signing Somerville, bringing in Max Kilman. It's looking at those options in the market which are low risk, because Fulkrug, the fee is not going to be enormous. We wait to see what the fee will be, but it's low risk for a player who's 31, but somebody who still has a point to prove and has a lot that he wants to do the rest of his career.
Yeah, what about Wan-Bissaka? Do you think he's going to make sense for them? I know you're a big fan, aren't you?
Yeah, no, I think Wan-Bissaka's had an interesting time at Manchester United. I'd say it's been quite split. Obviously, he's been there for 5 years now, still only 26 years old, joined after having a lot of hype from his time at Crystal Palace, where he was known as one of the best 1v1 defenders. But when you look at West Ham now, Soufal is the only right back at the club. He's 31 years old. Even though he is very consistent and he's always available, I think this would be a perfect move for Wan-Bissaka. A team that is pushing to play in Europe, a team that, they're clearly showing their intent on what they want to do next season. And if he can play week in, week out, I'm sure he'll get better.
OK, guys, guess what? There's exactly 4 weeks left of the transfer window. Coming up, we're going to assess the business done so far and who needs to do what before the deadline. pictures just reaching us from Germany. This is Manchester City's Jan Couto. He's heading to Borussia Dortmund. He had a medical yesterday, so will join on an initial loan. There is an obligation to buy the right back, which is worth £25.3 million. OK, I mentioned a few weeks ago, 4 weeks exactly, actually. Which clubs need to do more in this window, would you say? Sam?
I think Spurs will probably be interested in getting a striker. Last season, obviously, we saw Timo Werner come in January, only scored 2 goals. Richarlison did have a good, returning goals in terms of scoring 11 goals. But at the same time, I think he needs competition because he does have periods where he doesn't score. They did try Sunday, played 23 times up front, but he's definitely better out wide. We've seen links with Solanke, Ivan Toney. Ange has recently come out saying that they're light up front, but he wants someone that will fit their system. So I think that's definitely an area that they would want to improve.
OK. Anyone else? Any other clubs that you think?
I think Spurs as well. In terms of their strike options, Kulusevski could be their number 9 heading into this season. He's played quite well there in pre-season. I also look at their midfield, and it's whether or not you see Sarr and Basuma being a midfield that can take them to the next level, which is what they want, which is Champions League football. I think the one club we need to look at is Liverpool because they're yet to sign anybody in this transfer window. And there's reasons why that's been the case. Jurgen Klopp departing, Arne Slot coming in, and I think he really wanted to assess the current squad and all the options he has available because a number of them he's yet to properly meet yet because they've been at the Euros and the Copa America. So he's analysing that squad now. There's a new recruitment structure in place there. Michael Edwards in charge at the ownership group FSG. Richard Hughes has just joined as sporting director. So they'll be looking at players for the here and now, but then also they're looking at 3 key players who are out of contract next summer. Trent Alexander-Arnold, Virgil van Dijk and Mo Salah. They need to sort out that situation. If those players, and they're unable to get them to sign contracts now, then do you potentially look at finding an exit route for them before the end of this transfer window? I know that's a lot for these players who have achieved so much for Liverpool. And you also have to have one eye on the future, life after Virgil van Dijk, life after Mo Salah, because you think they probably have 2 or 3 years left in them. So Arne Slot sort of preparing for the here and now and trying to get Liverpool ready to make a charge, you'd think, for Champions League football this season, but also looking at 2 or 3 years to ensure that he has some sort of dynasty and is able to create a legacy at the football club like his predecessor, Jurgen Klopp.
I think Spurs is an interesting one because Højbjerg's left and he was never first choice, but he actually ended up playing a lot of football last season. Benton Kerr's struggled with injury, so that kind of does leave Basuma and Sarr as probably the first choice with Maddison in front of them. They obviously are continuously linked with Conor Gallagher, someone that I think there is a genuine interest in there. I think we can all agree. But it is just that striker position. For a team to have lost one of the best goal scorers in world football, Harry Kane, and a year later he's not been replaced, I kind of, in a weird way, admire it. Because they finished 5th.
They finished fifth
without having an actual striker and an actual bona fide goal scorer, didn't they? Which is very, very impressive. And people kind of criticise Spurs, but I think 5th in Postecoglou's first season was a strong season and one that most Spurs fans would have taken before a ball was kicked. But I think midfield and strike, I think Spurs have still got work to do. Yeah.
And what do you guys think of the signings so far? Are there any that stand out?
I think Manchester United have been really impressive in terms of getting deals done early. I think it's been a different type of strategy we've seen from Manchester United in this window under Ineos. They're finally being run like a proper football club. They're having multiple live options in each area of the pitch that they're looking to target. I think getting in Lenny Yoro is devastating news about the injury, but getting that signing over the line felt like a real statement when you consider how much he was linked with Real Madrid, and it felt almost certain that he'd eventually go there. And Joshua Zirkzee, really excited to see how he fits in at Manchester United. Not an out-and-out number 9, but we wait to see what impact he has on the players around him. Can he get the best out of Marcus Rashford, Garnacho as well? There's a lot of excitement around Manchester United. I think there's still work to be done, but I think Aston Villa, as much as I hate to say it, they've had a really strong window as they prepare for Champions League football.
I mean, I was going to try and not talk about Villa, but if I don't do it, then someone else brings it to my attention, and I'm forced to do it. Yeah, look, Villa have lost a good player in Douglas Luiz, as I said on Wednesday, and he was a pivotal part of what made Villa good under Unai Emery. But I like the variety they've now got in midfield. They've almost replaced him with 2 or 3 different options, which has given them a little bit more of squad depth. Onana wouldn't have been someone who I would have expected Villa to be signing this summer, but he's come in for 50 million. He's the direct Luiz replacement, albeit a different type of midfielder. I'm happy with that because I think he can do a lot of things within the team that Villa haven't had from midfielders. Ross Barkley, I think, ticks a lot of the boxes that Luiz had. Great year with Luton last year. Kind of feels like he's got his head right and has realised his career's not going to last forever, and he's showing the best of his ability now. And I'm looking forward to seeing him in a Villa shirt. I don't think Villa are done either because I think the Diaby sale was not planned for. They've let him go because it was a good opportunity, and now I think that enables them to be a bit more flexible with getting in someone like a João Felix, a statement signing. So I'm happy with Villa's business. Just a lot busier than I thought they would be.
I was actually quite surprised that Onana. It's almost like Villa. He was linked with a few teams, but Villa just got him, and it just happened. And he's the type of player that I'm sure you saw in the game yesterday. I saw a few highlights against RB Leipzig. He is so good at everything, and he's not reached his ceiling yet. He's still very young, and it's scary to see how good he can become. And Villa are a team that they're going to want to be in these Champions League spots and European spots and winning trophies as well. And I think with him in midfield, Maatsen coming in as well, it just seems like the right refresh for them to do that this season.
Dan is absolutely buzzing, aren't you?
Champions League campaign, Bella, you can't not be excited about that.
What about the newly promoted teams? Do you think they've done enough so far?
I think, we heard from Russell Martin. He spoke live to Sky Sports News earlier on this week, and he said they still need to strengthen. But I've been really impressed with what they've done already in this transfer window. Of course, they have less time to prepare for the Premier League than any other club because they went up by the playoffs. They secured the future of Flynn Downs. I know they're absolutely delighted about doing that after he was on loan last season from West Ham. I think they've been really smart as well. They've seen opportunities in the market, bringing Adam Lallana back to the football club, that Premier League experience he's got. What impact could that have? And Ben Brereton Diaz, we spoke about him on Good Morning Transfers. I think for 6.5 million to sign a proven goal scorer, somebody who showed at the age of 25, he's still got a lot in him. He scored 38 in his last 2 seasons at Blackburn. And we saw glimpses for Sheffield United last season. He couldn't get them out of the dire straits they found themselves in. But I think that could be a really clever bit of business as well.
OK, lovely. We've had a great time with you three. Thanks very much for your efforts. They're going to be back soon, don't worry. Good Morning Transfers is going to be back on Monday at 9 o'clock. And Transfer Talk midday on Sky Sports News. That's back on Monday as well. And don't forget, for a full day's roundup of all of the news, you can catch the Transfer Show, 2 instalments of that one, 5 o'clock and 7 o'clock this evening.